Today we're diving into something that honestly sounds almost too small to matter. We're talking about a parking ticket. A single 25-cent parking violation.
Right. In Millfield, Wisconsin, back in 1971. But this tiny little thing, this quarter, it blew up.
Blew up is maybe an understatement. It sparked this huge national conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It wasn't really about the 25 cents, was it? It became this massive, flashpoint for debates about privilege, about fairness, about equality, and, fundamentally about how regular people and government employees actually interact day to day.
And that's what we want to unpack today, right?
Yeah.
How this one little incident in this one small town could ripple outwards and actually change how cities across the whole country thought about governance.
Yeah, our mission here is to trace those ripples.
Yeah.
Because it reveals something really important about, how fragile our commitment to fairness actually is.
Yeah.
How precious it is when it works.
It's that tension, isn't it? Before we get into the nitty-gritty of Millfield 71, let's just take a second. Think about parking for yourself right now.
Uh-huh.
Are you maybe, frantically searching your pockets for quarters? Or maybe you're glued to a parking app on your phone, watching that timer tick down, trying to add 5 more minutes?
Or maybe you found that golden ticket-free parking right next door to where you need to be.
Exactly. We kind of take the system for granted, however it works now. But this story, it takes us back 50 years. And it shows us just how critical and honestly how easily undermined the idea of equal enforcement really is, whether it's a coin meter or a smart app.
And the key thing to understand, the reason this mattered so much more than just 25 cents, is what came to be called street-level democracy.
Street-level democracy. Explain that a bit.
It's basically where the rubber meets the road for government. It's
Yep.
those everyday interactions between citizens and public employees. Think teachers, police officers, social workers.
Or parking enforcement officers.
Or parking enforcement officers, exactly. These moments, these seemingly tiny transactions, they're actually where the big ideas about democratic fairness get tested. Does the law apply to everyone? Can your status, your money, your connections buy you a pass? That 25-cent ticket became the perfect test case.
Okay, so let's paint the picture. Millfield, Wisconsin, 1971. What are we looking at?
It's a decent-sized town for the time, about 47,000 people, kind of typical Midwestern city. You've got that post-war boom feeling still lingering, but there's trouble brewing downtown.
Trouble how?
Well, like a lot of places then, the downtown core, those, classic brick buildings, maybe 12 core blocks, it was struggling, really struggling.
Against what? The suburbs?
Exactly. The big villain was the brand new Northgate Shopping Center, built just 3 miles out on what used to be farmland. Gleaming, modern, acres and acres of free parking. Plus, climate control, big national chain stores that would undercut the local guys downtown. People were just flocking there. Downtown Millfield was hemorrhaging shoppers and businesses.
So the city had to do something. And in 1962, they installed parking meters.
Right. And we often think, meters, that's just about making money for the city. And yeah, they brought in some revenue, maybe $40,000 a year, which wasn't nothing.
But not huge.
Not huge. The real goal, the primary motivation, was about managing a resource. Parking spaces downtown were scarce.
They wanted turnover?
Precisely.
Yeah.
They didn't want downtown employees, or worse, the business owners themselves, hogging the prime spots right in front of the stores all day long. The meters were meant to keep things moving, encourage shoppers to come and go. It was framed as this scientific and efficient way to manage the downtown.
Makes sense. But for that efficiency to work, you need someone to actually enforce it consistently.
You need an agent of absolute, unwavering precision. And that agent was Dorothy Kowalski. Dot. Everyone called her Dot.
Dot Kowalski. Tell us about her. What was her story?
Dot was 42 in 1971. She'd been doing this job, parking enforcement officer, for 8 years already. And it wasn't like her dream job. It was a necessity. Her husband had lost a good factory job, consolidations, layoffs, that whole story. So this job was about keeping the family afloat. A steady city paycheck.
So she needed the job.
She really did. And the sources, the city records, interviews later on, they paint this picture of someone who wasn't just doing the job. She kind of embodied the system she was enforcing. Diligent isn't even the word.
How so? What did her day look like? It wasn't just wandering around hoping to find expired meters, was it?
Oh, absolutely not. Her routine was legendary for its meticulousness. The records literally describe it like a Swiss timepiece. She had a specific territory, 6 downtown blocks. She walked that route every day. Rain, shine, snow, about 8 miles a day on foot.
8 miles. That's a lot of walking.
A lot of walking. And here's the kicker. She didn't just check the meters once per shift. She checked all 800 meters in her zone twice.
Twice? Why twice?
That second pass was crucial. It was specifically designed to catch the people who let the meter expire and just stayed parked, hoping nobody would notice. Or the people who put in a quarter at 9 a.m. and figured they were good for the day. She was methodical, predictable.
Her presence alone must have been a deterrent. But that level of rigidity, that impartiality, it must have been tough to maintain, especially in a town where everyone knows everyone and some people think they're above the rules.
That's the absolute core of who she was, professionally speaking. Equal enforcement, no deviations, no, oh, just this once. The system demanded it, you see. The whole point of the meters encouraging turnover would collapse if she started making exceptions. It would immediately open the door to complaints, accusations of favoritism, so no exceptions. Not for anyone.
And that unwavering principle was about to collide head-on with someone who basically expected exceptions as a birthright.
Enter Harrison Blackwood III.
Sounds important already.
Oh, he was the absolute picture of the local establishment. Think silver hair, perfectly tailored suits, driving this big, flashy, cream-colored Cadillac Eldorado.
Yeah.
He wasn't just a business owner. He owned Blackwood Furniture, the biggest furniture store in 3 counties. And to top it off, he was the current president of the Chamber of Commerce.
This wasn't new money, was it? This was old Millfield.
Deep roots. Dynastic, really. His great-grandfather had founded that furniture store way back in 1889. It was a cornerstone of the town's economy. His grandfather had been the mayor back in the 30s. His father was a key player in getting the State University campus established nearby. So Harrison Blackwood III didn't just expect people to treat him with deference.
He felt entitled to it.
Absolutely. He saw himself, his family, his business as the engines driving Millfield. He employed people, it paid taxes, he led civic initiatives. In his mind, the minor rule, the little bureaucratic annoyances like parking meters, shouldn't really apply to him in the same way.
Okay, so we have the immovable object in Kowalski and the irresistible force, or at least the force that thinks it's irresistible, in Harrison Blackwood. What was the specific violation?
It was almost comically small, but perfectly set up for this clash. He needed to go to the First National Bank, prime downtown spot, right out front. He was going for what he thought would be a brief meeting, something about expanding a commercial loan for his store.
Oh, okay.
He parked his Cadillac, he got out, he walked over to the meter, and he put in one single quarter.
1 quarter. How much time did that buy? An hour?
Maybe an hour, tops. Depends on the exact meter rate then. But the meeting wasn't brief. It involved going over financial projections, loan documents, negotiations. It got complicated. What he planned is maybe 15, 20 minutes. It stretched and stretched.
So you're nearly 2 hours.
Nearly 2 hours. He's in the bank, probably feeling good about securing his loan expansion, thinking about multi-million-dollar deals, new inventory. And that quarter, he dropped in the meter. Complete forgotten. Ancient history. While this Cadillac sat there, occupying prime downtown real estate, long after its time was up.
The stage is perfectly set. You've got Dot, the embodiment of mechanical, unwavering principle, doing her rounds, and you've got Blackwood embodying generations of privilege and entitlement, about to walk out of that bank.
Okay, so picture this. It's a Tuesday afternoon. Sun's probably shining. Harrison Blackwood emerges from the First National Bank. Maybe feeling pretty pleased with himself, briefcase in hand, he walks towards his gleaming Cadillac.
And he sees her.
And he sees her, Dot Kowalski, standing right there by the meter. Her citation pad is out. She's writing, calmly, methodically, filling out the details on that little slip of paper.
Oh boy, I can just imagine his face. That moment of realization. This parking attendant is writing him a ticket. How did you play it initially?
He went for the standard playbook of the powerful dealing with what they see as a minor bureaucratic hurdle. Not shouting, not angry at first.
Yeah.
More like faintly amused condescension. Like a patron correcting an inefficient employee.
The don't you know who I am approach, but maybe subtle at first.
Exactly. He walked up, stated his name. I'm Harrison Blackwood, Blackwood Furniture, implying that should be enough. He suggested they could probably just, work this out without any paperwork. Like it was a misunderstanding she needed to correct, not a violation he'd committed.
He's leaning entirely on his status, not the facts, not the expired meter, just who he is.
100%. He immediately started listing his credentials, almost like a resume. I employ 47 people in this town. I'm president of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm working on the downtown revitalization plan right now.
The subtext being, my contributions are so huge, this tiny rule doesn't apply. The city owes me this.
Precisely. He literally asked her to just use common sense. which in his dictionary meant recognize my importance and let this go.
And what did she do? Did she argue? Did she explain?
This is the moment that makes the story. She didn't engage. She didn't debate his importance. According to witnesses, she didn't even look up from her citation pad initially.
Wow.
She just kept writing. And then, still focused on the task, she stated the facts. Plainly, no emotion, no deference, just your meter expired 1 hour and 23 minutes ago. The fine is 25 cents, payable at City Hall within 10 days.
Just the facts.
And then she added the killer line, the one that cut right through his argument. The ordinance does not include exceptions for business owners or civic leaders, period.
That right there, that's the whole conflict, isn't it? For Blackwood, it was never about the quarter. It was about his principle that his status should grant him exemption, the lack of respect.
Absolutely. This is a man who probably had city council members calling him for advice. The mayor probably consulted him on big decisions. The idea that this uniformed employee would treat him exactly the same as, I don't know, a college kid who ran out of change.
Yeah.
It was unthinkable. It was almost, in his worldview, like an act of insubordination against the natural order of Millfield.
She wasn't just enforcing a parking rule, she was challenging his entire place in the hierarchy.
She was. She was implicitly stating that the law, at least this little piece of it on this street corner, was blind. When he tried again, maybe pressing her about its economic impact, she just calmly reiterated that her job was to enforce the ordinance as written. Full stop.
Okay, so charm and status didn't work. What was his next move?
That's when the mask slipped. The condescension turned into anger. The request turned into demands. He wasn't used to being told no, especially not by someone like Dot.
He escalated.
He escalated. Big time. First, the classic, do you have any idea who I am? And when that didn't make her flinch, he went straight for the threat, the one designed to intimidate anyone who needed their job.
Let me guess. I'll have your job for this.
Almost verbatim. He said, clear as day, loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. I could have your job terminated with one phone call to the mayor. A direct, unambiguous threat to her livelihood.
Now, this is where it gets really critical, right? Because the system did have potential loopholes, didn't it? She
Right.
wasn't absolutely forced to write that ticket.
That's a crucial detail often missed. The city's own parking enforcement manual, according to later reviews, did give supervisors some discretion. They could technically void a ticket under certain circumstances, things vaguely worded like unusual circumstances or community relations concerns.
So a different officer, maybe someone less principled, or frankly just scared for their job.
Could have easily backed down right there. They could have said, okay, Mr. Blackwood, perhaps this qualifies as an unusual circumstance. I'll just issue a warning this time. Protect their job, avoid the conflict. That would have been the easy path, the path of least resistance.
But Dot didn't take it.
Dot held the line. Her response to his threat was the definition of professional integrity. She didn't argue about whether he could get her fired. She simply stated, again focusing on the facts, that threatening her employment didn't change the reality that his meter had expired.
She deflected it back to the process.
Exactly. She told him, essentially, if he had a problem with the parking policy itself or with her enforcement of it, he needed to take it up through the proper channels. Go talk to city administration, file a formal complaint. But right here, right now, she was doing her job, and the ticket stood.
How did it end? Did he just snatch the ticket and drive off?
He was apparently sputtering, just incandescent with rage and frustration. But what could he do? She calmly finished writing the ticket, detached it from her pad, and placed it neatly under the windshield wiper of his expensive Cadillac. Then she turned and continued on her route, checking the next meter.
While everyone watched.
While everyone watched. There were about 30 people by then, other merchants peering out their shop windows, customers coming out of the bank, some students milling around. They saw the whole thing. And they were about to become the carriers of this story, spreading it like wildfire through Millfield and eventually way beyond.
So the confrontation ends, Dot walks away, Blackwood's left fuming with a 25-cent ticket on his Cadillac. What happened next in Millfield? Did it just blow over?
Oh, absolutely not. The fallout was immediate, and it split the town right down the middle. It wasn't just gossip. It became this, proxy war over class, entitlement, and what the rules really meant in Millfield.
So who lined up on which side?
Well, on one side, you had a lot of the working class folks, maybe some city employees, definitely the university students. They saw Dot as a hero. Finally, someone stood up to the big shots. There was this real sense of validation, proof that maybe the system could be fair.
Did any of the witnesses speak out?
Yeah, the local paper interviewed several people who saw it happen. A woman named Martha Henderson, who was coming out of the bank, she was quoted saying Blackwood acted like he was too important to follow the same rules as everyone else. That sentiment really resonated with a lot of people. Seeing him get that ticket felt like a small victory for the little guy.
But the business community, Blackwood's peers, they must have seen it differently.
Completely differently. For many of them, this wasn't about abstract principles of equality. It was about pragmatism and, frankly, protecting their own. A nearby merchant, Robert Chen, argued pretty forcefully in the paper that Blackwood had done more for this downtown than any 10 other people combined.
So the argument was his economic value outweighed the need for strict rule enforcement.
Exactly. Chen said something like, "A little flexibility on parking enforcement seems like a small courtesy to pay for his investment in the community." They saw Dodd's actions not as principled, but as rigid, maybe even harmful to the fragile downtown economy by alienating a key player like Blackwood. It was about loyalty and perceived economic necessity over legal consistency.
How did the local media handle it? This sounds like prime front page material for the Millfield Daily Register.
Oh, it was huge. Front page, big headline. Downtown parking dispute raises questions about equal treatment. They ran a pretty detailed account of the confrontation.
Was it balanced? Did it favor one side?
They tried to be balanced, quoting people from both camps, like Henderson and Chen. But here's the thing. Just reporting the facts, quoting the witnesses, describing Blackwood's behavior and Dodd's calm professionalism. It didn't make Blackwood look good. The objective reporting inadvertently painted him as, well, petulant and entitled, as one later analysis put it. Dodd came across as the steadfast public servant.
So the local story itself was already damaging to Blackwood's image. But what's really wild is how this didn't stay local. How did it jump beyond Millfield?
It was astonishingly fast, especially for 1971, pre-internet, pre-social media. It just tapped into something.
Yeah.
Within maybe 2 weeks, newspapers in other Wisconsin cities, Madison, La Crosse, Green Bay, started reporting similar incidents.
Wait, similar confrontations? People citing the Millfield case?
Yes. Suddenly, you had other prominent citizens, business owners, local bigwigs in other towns getting parking tickets and actively challenging them. They were demanding special treatment, name-dropping their connections, and some were apparently even saying things like, well, in Millfield, they tried to pull this stunt on Harrison Blackwood. It became a playbook.
Wow. So it wasn't just a story spreading, it was behavior spreading.
Exactly. And then the Associated Press, the AP, picked up on this trend. They ran a national feature story connecting the dots between these incidents. They framed it as this growing rebellion by prominent citizens against municipal citations. They actually called it the Great Parking Meter Rebellion.
The Great Parking Meter Rebellion. That's amazing. A national story kicked off by a 25-cent ticket.
It really captured the imagination, or maybe the frustration, depending on your viewpoint. And this national attention forced cities everywhere to confront the issue. What was the right approach?
How did cities react? Was there a consensus?
Not at all. It caused a major split in municipal governance circles. Some city managers, mayors, they panicked. They saw this as like a potential revolt by the business community, the people they relied on for tax revenue and civic leadership.
So they caved?
Some did. They quietly sent out internal memos to their parking enforcement departments, telling staff to use more discretion, which was basically code for, if it's someone important, look the other way, don't cause trouble.
But not everyone agreed with that approach.
No. Thankfully, other city leaders, and importantly professional organizations, saw this trend as incredibly dangerous. They recognized that if you start making exceptions for the powerful on minor stuff like parking tickets, where does it stop? It undermines the entire principle of equal justice under the law.
Did the parking enforcement officers themselves weigh in?
They did, and it was crucial. The International Association of Parking Enforcement Officers, the IAEPO, they got involved. They issued a strong formal statement. They came down firmly on the side of uniform application of parking regulations regardless of the violator's social or economic status.
So they backed Kowalski's approach.
Absolutely. They understood the stakes. If the integrity of their profession could be bought off for 25 cents and a threat, it had no integrity at all. This wasn't just about parking anymore. It was about whether municipal law meant anything, or if it was just a suggestion for the less powerful. The battle lines were drawn.
Okay, so Millfield is polarized, the story's gone national, cities are scrambling, and the professional association is digging in. Back in Millfield, Mayor Patricia Williams had a real mess on her hands. What did she do?
She took a decisive step, realizing this needed a formal resolution, not just letting it simmer. She convened what they called a blue ribbon committee. The official mandate was to find a way to balance, and this is a delicate phrasing, community relations concerns with the need for consistent law enforcement.
Trying to thread the needle. Who was on this committee?
It was a mix: city council members, maybe a police liaison, community representatives, and fascinatingly, pointedly, they included Harrison Blackwood III himself as the voice of the business community.
Putting him right in the middle of finding the solution, that seems bold.
It was smart politics, I think. It meant he couldn't just snipe from the sidelines. He had to engage with the complexities, hear the other perspectives firsthand. It forced him to be part of the process, even if he didn't like the starting point.
Did the committee hold public hearings?
Yes, the meetings were public. Yeah, and they became this real focal point for civic debate in Millfield for about 2 months. People came and voiced their opinions. It was democracy in action, hashing out this fundamental issue.
Was there a key moment in those deliberations?
Absolutely. The turning point, by all accounts, was Dot Kowalski's testimony before the committee. She was asked to speak about her experience and her approach to the job.
What did she say? How did she frame it? The sources call it a masterpiece of principled public service.
She didn't focus on the confrontation itself or on Blackwood personally. She elevated the whole discussion. She talked about the principle of her role, and she delivered this line that just resonated deeply, the one that became famous. If I start making exceptions for people based on their wealth, status, or political connections, then I'm not enforcing the law. I'm administering a system of privilege.
Wow, that cuts right to the heart of it.
Doesn't it? She argued that her duty, the duty of any public servant in her position, wasn't to judge who deserved to break, but to apply the rules fairly and consistently to everyone, to provide certainty. That's what public trust was built on, she argued, not on favors.
A powerful ethical case. How did Blackwood respond? Did he have a counter-argument prepared for the committee?
He did. He presented the economic perspective, the viewpoint of capital, essentially. He argued that people like him, the business leaders, the job creators, the ones investing heavily in the community, their contributions did deserve some recognition. Not necessarily a free pass always, but some common sense, some flexibility, especially on minor stuff like parking.
So he was still pushing for that flexibility.
Yes. He was essentially making the case that the economic value he brought to Millfield was so significant that the city should tolerate a little bit of, let's call it, transactional friction reduction, smooth the way for the important people. He was arguing for a system that prioritized economic dynamism, maybe, over rigid legal consistency in minor matters.
So the committee is faced with these two competing visions: absolute, unwavering legal consistency versus a more flexible, pragmatic approach that acknowledges economic contribution. Where did they land?
They landed on a compromise, but one that fundamentally tilted towards Dot's position on integrity. The committee issued its final report in September 1971, and it laid out what became known as the Millfield Principles.
The Millfield Principles, what were they?
Okay, core tenets. First, they explicitly recommended maintaining uniform enforcement as the default, the standard operating procedure. No ambiguity there.
So Dot's approach was validated as the baseline.
Exactly. But they did acknowledge Blackwood's point about occasional, genuinely exceptional circumstances. So, second, they recommended creating formal appeal processes. If someone felt they had a truly extraordinary reason for a violation, a documented medical emergency, something like that, there would be a clear bureaucratic channel to make their case.
But crucially, that exception wouldn't be granted on the street by the officer or because of who you knew.
Precisely. It moved the discretion away from the street-level interaction, away from status or pressure, and into a documented, transparent process, case by case, with justification needed. And then the third principle, and this was arguably the most important for officers like Dot.
Protecting them from retaliation.
Yes. The principles explicitly called for policies to protect public employees from retaliation if they refuse to provide special treatment or bend the rules under pressure. This was huge. Yeah. It meant if Blackwood had called the mayor under these new principles, the mayor would have been obligated to back Dot, not discipline her. It gave teeth to the ideal of impartial enforcement.
That's a powerful shield for public servants.
Immense. It shifted the power dynamic. The expectation was now that integrity would be protected, not punished.
And did these Millfield principles actually get adopted? Did they have an impact beyond just this one committee report in this one town?
Oh, the impact was almost immediate and widespread. Dozens of cities, particularly across the Midwest initially, looked at what Millfield did and said, that makes sense, we need that.
Yeah.
They formally adopted the Millfield principles or variations of them.
So it became a model.
It became the model. It established in policy that equal treatment under basic municipal laws wasn't just a nice idea you hoped for. It was a non-negotiable, fundamental part of democratic governance. That 25-cent ticket had, in effect, rewritten the rulebook for countless cities.
So Millfield adopts these principles, other cities follow suit. But the story doesn't end there in 1971, does it? The ripples from that 25-cent confrontation kept spreading, influencing things in ways nobody could have predicted back then.
That's right. The immediate resolution was just the beginning. We're talking about a legacy that stretches across 50 years, shaping everything from how parking officers are trained to how we think about ethics in government, even how we design technology now.
Let's start with the most direct impact. The professionalization of parking enforcement itself. You mentioned the IAEPO supporting DOT. Did that translate into concrete changes?
It absolutely did. The IAEPO didn't just issue a statement. They took the Millfield principles and codified them into practical training standards and best practices. These became known widely within the profession as the Kowalski Protocols.
The Kowalski Protocols. I love that. So what did they actually involve? What changed for the average parking officer in, say, 1975?
Okay, several key things.
Yeah.
First, mandatory training modules based directly on the Millfield scenario. Role-playing exercises on how to respond professionally but firmly to demands for special treatment, how to handle threats. Second, and this was huge, mandatory documentation requirements. Meaning, if someone important, a politician, a big CEO, whoever tried to pressure an officer or demand their ticket be torn up, the officer wasn't just allowed to refuse. They were required to immediately document the entire exchange, who said what, any specific threats made, time, location, witnesses, and they had to file that report with the supervisor, usually within the hour.
Wow, so it weaponized bureaucracy against corruption. Trying to pull rank became a documented incident.
Exactly. It created a paper trail. It discouraged the behavior because the attempt itself would be formally recorded. Furthermore, the protocols often required third-party witness statements and mandatory supervisor sign-off for any ticket cancellation involving someone deemed high profile. No more quiet favors in the back room. It built layers of accountability.
And crucially, it protected the officers.
That was paramount. The protocols explicitly included provisions for legal support and whistleblower protections against retaliation. Officers were actively encouraged and empowered to uphold the standards, knowing the institution theoretically had their back. And these protocols weren't just suggestions. Over 200 cities formally adopted them within 5 years of the Millfield incident.
The academic world also picked up on this, didn't they? Seeing it as more than just a parking dispute.
Right. Enter Dr. Samuel Richardson. In 1976, he published this really influential paper called Street-Level Democracy. His argument was that what Dr. Kowalski did wasn't just about enforcing a minor ordinance. She was actively defending a core democratic principle, equality before the law, right there on the front lines, against the pressures of social and economic hierarchy.
And did he find evidence that this approach actually worked better in practice? Because Blackwood's argument was that flexibility was better for community relations.
Richardson's research directly refuted that. He compared cities that adopted the Kowalski Protocols with those that stuck to more discretionary enforcement. And the data was clear. The cities with consistent, uniform enforcement actually saw improvements in citizen satisfaction.
Really? Less flexibility led to happier citizens.
Yes. They saw, on average, a 25% reduction in citizen complaints about favoritism or unfairness in municipal services overall, not just parking. And metrics related to public trust and local government fairness actually went up. It turns out people value predictability and fairness more than they value the possibility of getting an occasional break based on who they know. Consistency builds trust.
That's fascinating. And you mentioned these principles started to bleed over into other city departments. It wasn't just parking anymore.
No, the logic was infectious. Once you establish the principle for parking meters, why wouldn't it apply elsewhere? Police departments started looking at it for minor traffic stops should the local judge's speeding ticket get torn up. Fire departments and building inspectors found it incredibly useful.
How so? In what way?
Think about building codes. You've got a powerful developer, maybe a big campaign donor, pressuring a city building inspector to overlook a serious safety violation, inadequate wiring, maybe structural issues to save money or speed up a project. It happens all the time.
Right, huge pressure on that inspector.
Immense pressure. But departments that adopted the Millfield model, as it was sometimes called, could point to the policy. They had protocols for documenting pressure, mandatory reviews for any overrides on safety violations, protections for the inspector who refused to sign off. It made it significantly harder for influence to trump safety regulations. Cities started promoting this consistency as a benefit, a predictable, fair environment for everyone doing business, not just the well-connected.
There's another angle here too, right? The gender dynamics. Dot Kowalski, a woman in a non-traditional public-facing enforcement role standing up to a powerful man. Did that resonate?
Oh, profoundly. Her story became almost legendary among women entering or working in law enforcement and public service roles, especially in the early 70s. The National Association of Women in Law Enforcement, which was founded right around that time in 1972, they explicitly pointed to the Millfield Rebellion as an inspiration.
How did it inspire them?
It demonstrated that authority and effectiveness in these roles came from integrity and adherence to principle, not from physical size or conforming to traditional gender expectations of deference. Dot wasn't physically intimidating. She was professionally immovable, and the numbers show it. Between 71 and 75, the number of women working in parking enforcement nationwide shot up by something like 340%.
Wow, that's a massive increase.
It really was. And it had knock-on effects. Margaret Thompson, who later became Milwaukee's first female police chief in 1978, actually credited Dot Kowalski publicly. She said Dot's example helped change expectations, showing that women could and would uphold professional standards without compromise, paving the way for women to advance in fields previously dominated by men.
So this 25-cent ticket is now influencing police chief appointments. The ripples just keep getting wider. What about the legal and judicial system? Did it notice?
It did, especially as the country was grappling with the Watergate crisis and questions of abuse of power and privilege at the highest levels. The idea that no one is above the law, even for minor infractions, suddenly felt very relevant.
How did it manifest?
Well, the American Bar Association, the ABA, referenced the Millfield incident in its 1974 updates to its ethics guidelines for lawyers and public officials. It was used as a case study in maintaining professional integrity against pressure. And even more remarkably, in 1975, none other than the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Warren Burger.
The Chief Justice?
Yes. In a written opinion dealing with the importance of judicial independence, he actually drew a direct parallel. He compared Dot Kowalski's refusal to bend the rules based on Harrison Blackwood's status to the fundamental need for judges to resist political or social pressure and rule impartially based only on the law and the facts, regardless of who the parties are.
From a parking meter to the Supreme Court. That's incredible. And you mentioned Watergate.
Yeah, federal prosecutors and investigators working on the corruption cases that emerged during and after Watergate reportedly used the Millfield principles internally. It became a kind of shorthand, a reminder that even seemingly small compromises for powerful people could erode the entire system. The principle of holding everyone accountable, regardless of status, was paramount, whether it was for an illegal campaign contribution or an expired parking meter. The underlying ethic was the same.
It even became a teaching tool, right, for future public servants.
Exactly. Professor Janet Chen at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government developed a detailed case study and role-playing exercise called the Millfield simulation. It became a staple in public policy programs.
What did students learn from actually playing the roles of Dot and Harrison?
It was apparently very effective at revealing the nuances. When students played Harrison Blackwood, they often didn't see themselves as villains. They genuinely felt the frustration with bureaucracy, the belief that their economic contributions should matter, that the rules were hindering progress. They understood his motivations.
But playing Dot,
they felt the squeeze, the direct threat to their job, the social pressure, the awareness of the power imbalance. They realized how much courage it took to just stick to the rules and how the rigid application of the law was, in that moment, their only real defense.
So it taught them it wasn't a simple case of good versus evil.
Exactly. It was a clash of legitimate, competing values, economic dynamism versus democratic fairness, flexibility versus consistency. And the simulation usually demonstrated that once you make that one exception for status, it becomes almost impossible to draw the line anywhere else. It highlighted why systemic fairness often relies on that seemingly inflexible bureaucratic integrity.
And this wasn't just an American phenomenon, this tension.
Not at all. A big study in 1980 by the International City Management Association looked at municipal governance trends globally. They found reports of similar conflicts, public servants pushing back against elite pressure for special treatment in something like 60 different countries across continents, mostly clustered in the 1970s.
So Millfield was tapping into a global shift.
It seemed to be part of this broader, perhaps slow-moving global trend towards greater professional autonomy and bureaucratic integrity, challenging older, more entrenched systems of patronage and elite privilege in the delivery of basic public services. Dot's stand was a microcosm of a much larger movement.
Now, fast forward. Technology changes. Those mechanical meters dot-checked are mostly gone. We have pay stations, apps, license plate readers. Did the Kowalski principles become obsolete?
Not obsolete, they just had to adapt. The technology changed, but the core ethical dilemma remained. How do you ensure fairness when the enforcement mechanism changes? With automated systems, like license plate readers that automatically issue tickets, the challenge became, how do you build in fairness and the possibility for legitimate exceptions without relying solely on algorithms?
So how did they adapt?
It led to the idea of smart systems. Systems that use technology for detection, but still mandate human oversight for appeals in complex situations. The goal was to keep the efficiency of automation, but preserve the space for professional human judgment, the very thing DOT embodied, especially in edge cases or appeals. You couldn't just eliminate the human element of fairness.
And technology created new challenges too, right? Like the digital divide.
Absolutely. If your city moves entirely to a parking app that requires a smartphone and a credit card, what about people who don't have those? Are you unintentionally creating a system that's inherently unfair to poorer residents or the elderly? Applying the Kowalski principles today means ensuring equal access to the means of compliance, not just equal application of the penalty. Fairness has to be baked into the technology design itself.
It's amazing how resilient these core ideas are. They were even tested during huge recent events, weren't they?
They really were. Think about environmental regulations. Back in the 1990s, EPA Administrator Dr. Patricia Williams, who, maybe coincidentally, shared the same name as the Millfield mayor, she publicly cited Dr. Kowalski's example. She was under intense pressure from major industries to grant waivers and exemptions from new pollution controls.
And she used Dot's story.
She did. She said remembering Dot's courage in upholding her small piece of public trust against powerful pressure helped give her the resolve to hold the line on environmental rules that were scientifically and legally sound, despite the economic threats and political lobbying.
And more recently, COVID, social justice movements.
Both. During the pandemic, cities suddenly had all these new, rapidly changing rules, lockdowns, mask mandates, modified parking for essential workers. The challenge was enforcing them consistently and fairly, resisting pressure to give breaks to certain groups while cracking down on others. The Millfield principles of uniform application were directly relevant, and with the Black Lives Matter movement, activists explicitly drew connections. They argued that the demand for equal treatment under the law, the core of Dot's stand, needed to be applied far more broadly, especially in policing. They called for consistent standards, accountability, and an end to discriminatory enforcement patterns based on race or neighborhood, essentially, applying the Kowalski Protocols to much higher stakes interactions.
Even AI researchers are looking at this.
Yes. It's become a classic case study in the field of AI ethics and algorithmic governance. How do you build systems that make decisions fairly? How do you encode values like impartiality, the possibility of appeal, resistance to bias, the very things Dot descended into code? The Dot versus Harrison confrontation is seen as this perfect, simple illustration of the complex interplay between rules, discretion, status, and fairness that AI systems now have to navigate.
It all comes full circle. And there was even a final formal recognition for both Dot and Harrison, wasn't there?
A really poignant bookend of the story. In 2021, exactly 50 years after the incident, the National League of Cities created a new annual award, the Dorothy Kowalski Award for Excellence in Municipal Service, honoring public servants who demonstrate outstanding integrity.
A fitting tribute. And Harrison Blackwood.
Harrison Blackwood III passed away in 1998. But before he died, he did something remarkable. He established a significant scholarship fund at the local university, specifically for students going into public administration.
And did he ever acknowledge the incident?
He did. When setting up the fund, he included a written statement. It read, in part, that he learned the hard way that status and community contributions don't entitle anyone to special treatment under the law. And he added, Mrs. Kowalski taught me a lesson that Millfield, and perhaps the nation, needed to hear.
Wow. Decades later, a full admission and validation of her stand. That's powerful.
So, when you boil it all down, that 25-cent parking ticket, its real value wasn't the quarter. It was the principle it came to represent. It established this incredibly durable precedent that for democracy to actually function, you need institutions, yes. But maybe more importantly, you need individuals within those institutions who have the courage to uphold fairness and equal treatment, especially when it's hard. Especially when it means standing up to the powerful when it would be so much easier just to look the other way.
And that choice, that tension between doing what's right according to the rules and doing what's convenient or what accommodates power, That's not just a historical footnote from 1971, is it? It plays out every single day, everywhere.
Constantly, at every level.
The story of Dot Kowalski, walking her beat, meticulously checking those meters, refusing to back down under threat. It's this incredibly vivid reminder that professional integrity, that commitment to principle, actually matters more than influence or status. Those small, everyday acts of holding the line, they're not small at all. They're what actually preserves the ideal of democratic fairness.
So maybe the thought to leave you with today is this. Think about the last time you encountered a situation where rules were applied, or maybe not applied, based on who someone was. Maybe you saw a public servant stand their ground, like Dot. Or maybe you saw someone get a pass.
Or maybe you were faced with a choice yourself, even a small one. When do you push for a little privilege, a small exception just for you? And when do you choose to uphold the principle of fairness, even if it's less convenient? What's that daily choice you make in your own life, your own work, to value principle over privilege?
It's something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you next time.